It all began on a seemingly ordinary morning. James, a hardworking man, was rushing off to work, his tie slightly askew and a cup of coffee in hand. Hara, his loving wife, waved goodbye with her dazzling smile, her beauty always the center of attention. Ben, the gateman, stood by the gate as always, his uniform crisp and his gaze lingering just a second too long on Clara. But James was too busy to notice, too trusting to suspect. If only he had known what lingered behind those polite nods and cordial smiles. Weeks passed, and James couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Clara, who once filled the house with her laughter, seemed distant. She would avoid his touch, spend hours on her phone, and always had an excuse to leave the house when he came home. James thought it was stress, or maybe his late hours at the office. But deep down, his instincts whispered that something was wrong. It wasn't just Clara. Neighbors began to talk. The couple down the street mentioned hearing strange noises late at night when James wasn't home. Perhaps it's nothing, James thought, but the doubts planted in his heart began to grow like weeds, choking his peace of mind. One fateful afternoon, James came home early, a surprise for Clara. He wanted to rekindle their connection, to fix whatever had broken between them. As he entered the house, he heard muffled voices upstairs, voices that shouldn't have been there. His heart pounded as he climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last. And then he saw them. Clara, in the arms of Ben. The world seemed to stop. Clara froze, her face pale, while Ben quickly straightened, his eyes filled with defiance rather than shame. James stood there, broken, unable to comprehend the betrayal unraveling before him. Why, Clara? James's voice cracked as he demanded answers. But Clara, ever the charmer, weaved a tale of loneliness and neglect, shifting the blame onto James's long hours and inattentiveness. For a moment, James almost believed her. But trust, once broken, is hard to mend. Meanwhile, Ben's attitude began to change. The quiet, obedient gatesman transformed into a controlling, possessive figure. He began blackmailing Clara, demanding more than she was willing to give. The secret romance that once thrilled her turned into a nightmare. Then, one stormy night, James was jolted awake by a commotion outside. He rushed to the backyard, finding Clara sprawled on the ground, unconscious. Ben was nowhere to be found, but his presence lingered like a shadow. Police arrived, piecing together a grim story. Ben, it seemed, had grown dangerous. His obsession with Clara turned violent when she tried to end things. James stared at Clara's fragile form, his anger and heartbreak overshadowed by worry. In that moment, he realized how far deceit could go and how much it could destroy. Clara survived, but she would carry the scars, both physical and emotional, for the rest of her life. James, shattered by the betrayal, chose to walk away. He sold the house, left the memories behind, and began rebuilding his life piece by piece. They say trust is like glass. Once broken, it can never be the same. For James, this was more than a lesson. It was a transformation. He vowed to never ignore his instincts again, no matter how painful the truth might be. As he sat alone in a park one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, James felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Though his heart was heavy, he knew he had survived the storm. And sometimes surviving is enough to start anew. Because in the end, the truth always finds a way, no matter how deeply it's buried.